Let's just take a moment and find our seat. Get yourself comfortable. I do have just a couple of quick announcements. So my Kundalini group, there'll be no class on Friday the 5th, but the class will be ongoing after that. So please join that if you'd like to. Also, I have a retreat that is coming up April 9, 10, and 11. Details and registration links are on my website. So I'd love to have you there. Retreat's a wonderful way to deepen together, to connect more fully with the teachings, with the lineage. And many people who came to the last retreat, they told me that for weeks afterwards, they had felt this grace pouring into them. Then it was really a life-changing experience. And so often in life, we just don't take the time to really stop and to drop in. And so I encourage you, if you feel called to retreat, it's a wonderful opportunity to step more fully onto the path, to connect more fully with your experience. And so those are the two announcements. So I'm going to invite everyone just to close your eyes and to settle in. And just to take a moment and welcome your experience. Just noticing what's here. So what is here right now? That is perceiving your experience. What's here that is awake and aware? Like, what is that thing? And can you just gently notice this? The gentle presence of your being, of your non-dual nature, your timeless, eternal nature. And from this space of divinity, can you welcome all of what's here? Whether it's more aspects of your divinity, your heart, your love, your compassion, the peace, the stillness. Or also, sometimes there's difficulty here. There's pain, there's suffering. There's heartache or difficulty. Whatever it is, can you welcome it? Just breathing deeply and fully. Radically welcoming. Inviting, allowing. And so we're doing the opposite of pushing away. We're inviting whatever it is that wants to come out of the darkness or out of the light into the space of our consciousness. And so we're just breathing here and feeling, opening, noticing the compassionate and healing quality of welcoming, not pushing away, but saying yes. Yes. Even if it's difficult or painful, we gently say yes. And if there's anything difficult here, I invite you to soften around it. Just to give up fighting with it and just to notice, what is it like not to fight with your experience? So breathing in and breathing out, softening, letting go, opening, noticing. Noticing the divinity that you are, the silent, eternal radiance, and yes, welcoming any aspect of yourself which is fighting with life, fighting with this moment, fighting. And so I encourage you just to continue breathing in this way. I'm going to transition now into the more active aspect of Satsang. Just share a little story from today. I was at the park with my little girl. I just kicking the soccer ball around. And an old friend, he pulled up on his bike and said, "Hey, Craig." And we just stopped and chatted a little bit. And he was telling me just what a tough year it was, a challenging year, crazy year. He has some kids the same age as mine. And he told me that him and his wife had split up just during this last year. And he built, basically like split part of his house in half. And she's living in one half and he's living in the other. He said she got the garage. I thought she got the bad end of the deal, but this is how life is sometimes. Sometimes we trip over the darkness, we trip over the human. Sometimes things just don't work out. Sometimes love is not enough. We don't know how to communicate with each other. Being human is just hard. It's hard. And it's important to know how to work with this difficulty. To know how to welcome it. To receive it. To be with it. To breathe into it, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it hurts, even if it's confusing. Can we welcome the darkness? And the beautiful thing, when we become very conscious in relationship to our life and to our suffering, the darkness that we trip over, as we welcome it, it comes into the light. We welcome it to be embraced by the light, to be held. And it may not always be fixed, but what you will notice is that the darkness will become infused with light. And there's many things in my life that, just having a family and being a father, there's many things that I trip over every day. And awakening, it doesn't necessarily solve all the details of your relationship. but it does infuse the details. It infuses the human with the divine. And it's able to do this if we welcome it. If we welcome it all, if we don't push it away, if we don't blame ourselves or judge ourselves. I have this older daughter, and I was driving her around, in the van, and I was just having a wonderful time, just being in her presence. She was my first baby, even though she's 20 now. And she started to break down with me, telling me how anxious she is about how much homework she has at college and this and that, and this struggles in her life. And earlier in that day, I asked her if she was able to babysit later in the evening. And she didn't want to babysit. But she said yes. And then she was telling me if she says no, she feels guilty. And sometimes we do this to ourselves, where we make ourselves feel guilty. I told her, I was like, sweetie, if you don't want to babysit, you don't have to. The last thing I want is for you to be anxious. The last thing I want is for you to be anxious. She kept telling me how guilty she feels because she never really babysits much for us or for her little sister. And I said, please, don't add to your suffering. Don't add guilt to your suffering. If you don't want to do something, please say no. Please say no. And free yourself from the bondage of guilt. From the guilt. But she went on and on, telling me all of her woes, her struggles. And I sat there just welcoming it. Of course, as a father, there's part of me that wants to fix it, but most of it I couldn't fix. There's nothing, I could do. I couldn't make her college, stop handing out so much homework. But sometimes to be a good friend or a good parent, we just listen in a place that's fully welcomes what's here, fully allows, fully supports. And so whether you do this with yourself, or you do it with your partner, or your parents, or your children, or your dog, whatever it is. I was taking a little nap before Satsang, and Doodles came up, hopped up in bed, and was cuddling with me. Stuck his wet nose right in my face. So we welcome this. We welcome it all. We welcome it all with love, with spaciousness, with peace. This is what supports freedom. This is what supports a space of awakening. Because non-dual reality, that's all it is. It's just one giant welcome space, inclusive space. Where it's not pushing. It's not pushing life away. It's including. Including. So anyways, I invite you all to work with this, at perhaps a new mantra. And with each breath, the mantra is welcome. Welcome, whatever's here. Darkness, something arising out of the darkness, we welcome it. Something arising out of the light, we welcome it. Something arising out of the mundane, we welcome it. When you fully welcome life, whole new worlds open up within you. So, If anyone has a question, I welcome your questions. Also, a number of email questions, so I'll get to those. And so, let's see what is on everyone's mind today. Hi, Craig. I have a question about progress on the path. If it is spirit that wakes up in us, then what is the ego's or the seeker's role in moving forward on the path to abiding awakening? Hi, Craig. I have a question about progress on the path. If it is spirit that wakes up in us, then what is the ego or seeker's role in moving forward on the path? Well, the ego's role is to surrender. And most people think that surrender just means giving up. But oftentimes surrender also means coming forward. I've told this story many times, but I was always, when I was with my teacher, an extremely, I don't know if shy is the right word, but I didn't like to speak. I just liked to be silent all the time. I liked to be unseen. I liked to be a nobody for most of my life. I mean, I still do. I love being anonymous. My wife is always trying to introduce me to her friends and wanting me to, be their teacher or support them, or she talks about me as a teacher. My mother does the same thing. She's always telling her friends about me, and I really don't like it. I like to be anonymous, with those with those around me. And so I've had this thing my whole life of just kind of being really quiet, very comfortable being in the background. And so after awakening, spirit woke up. Part of my ego surrender was actually to come forward and to speak up and to be seen, to be heard, to be noticed, to have value, to take up space. To teach. In order to teach, you have to be seen. To share, to give. In order to give, oftentimes you have to be seen in some way. So what is the ego or the seeker's role? It's to fall into alignment with the spirit. And so the spirit may tell the ego, hey, settle down. Settle down. Take the backward step. Take the back seat. Chill out. Don't run your mouth so much. The spirit may say, give you simple instructions, to the ego, to simmer down, to take it down a notch, or take it down 5 notches. But spirit may also say, hey, I need you to come forward. I need you to be bold in this moment. I need you to speak up. I have this old Jeep, and it's just time for me to get rid of it, to sell it, And so I put it on Craigslist, and this fella called me up, and I told him the price, and he started being real aggressive with me, saying, okay, like, here I come. I'm coming over right now to buy it. And I'm like, hey, just hold on a second, let me tell you about it. If you ever, buy a car, you want to buy a car from someone like me, because I'm ridiculously honest about the car. And so I told him all the details and, what it needed. And I mean, it has 200 plus thousand miles on it. So I like to be transparent about, if someone's going to buy something, what you're getting. And, he was just being real pushy. and really just wanting to come get it right now. And I took the time and was patient enough to talk him out of it. Because this is what was true in the moment. So sometimes, your job is to be radically honest, even if it's not in your best interest. When you move more into this non-dual state of the spirit, like Nick is bringing forward here, we don't view life as me against the world. I need to get as much money as I can, like a used car salesman. This fella, he told me, basically he wanted to have it to drive back and forth to Albuquerque every weekend to see his kids. And Albuquerque's the closest city to me, and it's 4 hours away. So I said, no, this is not the car for you. This is not the car. You need a different car, a better car, less miles, a longer life. This is a good car for driving in the mountains, short trips. My wife, she was in the other room. She was kind of listening. So, well, you talked him out of it, didn't you, Craig? I said, yeah, but that's the truth. And so the ego's job post-awakening is to come into alignment with truth, to speak the truth, to be the truth, to live the truth. And if the ego falls down and makes a mistake or makes a fool out of itself or whatever, to forgive itself, to be humble and to forgive yourself for being human, to forgive yourself. The ego's job is to be healthy. Sometimes people post-awakening, they try to give up all of the aspects of their ego, but they do so in a way that spiritually bypasses, and they don't actually do their healing work. And so then they develop a shadow, a messiness, and it just reasserts itself. So the ego's job is to become healthy. The ego's job is to heal. And all of these are in alignment with awakening. Because if you awaken and if you don't have a healthy ego, then the ego will revolt and it'll fight and it will resist, and it'll create messes. So the ego's job is to become healthy. The more healthy the ego is, the more quiet it is, the more in alignment with truth it is, the less resistance there is. The more unhealthy an ego is, more resistance, more pain, more confusion, more shadow. That's a beautiful question. So anyways, there's a couple questions from the usual suspects, and I'm just going to put it out there. If anyone new wants to ask a question, I'd love to hear from you as well. I'd love to hear from you. If anyone asks a question, please keep in mind these are recorded. I won't show your face, but I'll show your voice on YouTube. So if you don't want to see that, just put the question in the chat. The other thing is there was another thing there, but I don't know what it is. Let's see. Yeah, just be real clear with your question if you have one. So anyways.
Hey, what's up, guys? Usual suspect, I guess, incoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what's up, guys? So, yeah, I just I had a little question about we talked a little bit on Friday about like you know, little chakra point on the head, whatever. So I noticed if I breathe, feel, and really open to it, it really exasperates and tightens up, and like, whoa, it almost like puts up a big fight.
Mhm.
And then it like eventually maybe will kind of like whatever. But I kind of brought this up before too. I noticed if I just also slip into spaciousness, it's almost like I could do that like real quick sometimes, and it just like dissolves like right away, like
Mhm.
without even breathing, feeling, opening. And so I was just wondering, like maybe there's still value in really breathing into it. Maybe just slipping into that sort of spacious zone is good. Maybe just what you think on that. Thanks.
Yes, yes. Say it again, David.
So
Make the distinction clear for me so I understand
so I have this chakra point on my head. It's
it.
kind of tense. If I breathe, feel, and open to it, it really exasperates,
Hmm.
for a long time and then goes away. If I just slip into spaciousness, it sometimes will just dissolve right away.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if there's still value in, focusing on breathing into it or just
yeah, yeah,
whatever.
yeah. No, that's a good question. So the thing I would like you to imagine is that breathing, feeling, and opening, and slipping into spaciousness. I want you to imagine those being the same thing. I want you to imagine spaciousness being a given, that space is always here. Like there's room that's always here for whatever it is. Whether it's our body, and it's our body is suffering, our mind, and the mind is suffering, the emotional nature is suffering, the body's feeling wonderful, the human sense is feeling wonderful. There's room for it all. There's space for it all. There's space for life to happen. And so this evening, when I was speaking about welcoming, it's acknowledging that, like, in order to welcome anything, there has to be space, there has to be room. And what we're acknowledging first and foremost is that there's space here. There's room here for whatever it is that's happening within us. And if, say, for example, like David's describing, there's a pain in your chakra center, one of the chakra centers, we want to feel into it in a light and gentle way. So if you focus on it and it becomes more intense, like he says, it became exacerbated, it intensifies. So it's normal that if you have pain in the body, when you focus on it, it's normal for it to intensify for maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds, if you just give it your full attention. But if your focus is relaxed and peaceful, that intensity will start to diminish and spread out into the space and the peace that's here. So sometimes if we focus on something very intensely with an agenda to fix it or to heal it or get rid of it, it will put up a fight. It'll resist. It's kind of like, if you have a teenage kid, you say, hey, like you and me, we're going to talk about our emotions together and we're going to have a father-son moment or whatever. Like the teenage kid is going to, become real resistant and fight back. And if you become overly focused on the kid's just going to fight more. But if you give the kid like a lot of space and say, hey, let's go on a hike, let's go camping, there's a good chance it will just come forward and unravel on the trip. And so our meditation practice wants to be the same way. If there's tension in the body, we're opening to it in a spacious way. And so if the focus, we want it just to be light and gentle. Just very light, gentle, breathing into it, feeling it, including it, loving it. And just see if, see what happens, David. I think sometimes, just to, I'll just add one more layer to this. Sometimes I think in the way you're describing of just going into the space, sometimes we go into the space, but then we disconnect from our body. And it seems like the pain in our head, in the third eye or whatever, disappears. But really, we left the body is what happens. And so we just don't notice the pain anymore because we left the body. We stepped into a transcendent space. And so that's a really good distinction there. So there's transcendent space and there's healing space. But in theory, healing space has an element of transcendence to it. It has an element of spaciousness to it that's inclusive and allowing and inviting. It's like space that's embodied. So play with that and see what happens. Yeah. Yeah. Good to see you. Good to see you, David. Okay. Looks like Richard is back. Hi, Richard. Let's see. Can we hear you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Hi. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Hi, Facebook friends. Lisa, your dog is super cute. Craig, yesterday I found myself in a space where things were really empty. There was no motivation. And it was just like no ground. I feel the same way today. I feel like I could sit here and let my whole life disappear.
Yeah.
But I can't do that. And I'm not going to do that. So I know that this is just a certain kind of space and phase, and it'll be here however long it is, and maybe it moves in and out. That's fine too. I'm just looking for some tips and tricks about how to navigate this space well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. So one of the things about, say, this space that comes, and there's no ground, there's no motivation, is one of the things that's important to do is to ask, well, what is the purpose of this space? A different way of asking it is, well, what could I learn from this? What is this space teaching me? What's it showing me? And sometimes we just have to give ourselves permission to plunge deeply into this space, to melt into it. And then notice, like, what's happening in the background. For many years, God put me in this space of like zero motivation. And, it became very disconcerting because I did not want to do anything at all. Just sit there and, in a sense, just drool on myself, just becoming like, just letting go so deeply into the space. And I would literally just start drooling on myself. Like Ramana Maharshi, he sat in this, they called it a cave, but in India they have like these, I don't know what you call it, like an underground layer, like an underground layer. And he would just meditate down there. I think he was down there for something crazy, like 14 years or something. I don't know. And these are times of what I call being erased, where there's just big chunks of ego that start to be taken from you in this space. And if you trust it, it can be a lovely time, just tremendous peace, freedom, emptiness, nothingness, doing nothing. But in the background, if you notice, oftentimes you notice after the fact, that in a sense, like God is wiping the hard drive clean, emptying it out. If I looked at, say, the day before I went into this period, I had lots of thoughts, lots of memories, lots of character qualities and this type of thing. Lots of cragginess. I'm not saying that cragginess is good or bad. I just had a lot of it. And I stepped into the space of emptiness after a number of years. If I look back and try to find some of those cragginess memories, like so much of my memory was, in a sense, wiped clean. It disappeared, emptied out. Now, afterwards, you feel much lighter. There's a quality of lightness when you don't have all that denseness you're carrying around it. And unfortunately, most human beings are carrying with them a quality of denseness. And like even my daughter, when I spoke to her, she told me how much guilt she had, just this heavy burden of guilt about not babysitting for her dad. I was looking at her like she was crazy. I was like, you don't need to have any guilt. Like, where do you get all this guilt from? I certainly don't, lay on guilt trips on her. And it could just be from our Irish Catholic background, or it could be from our culture, it could be from her mom's side, it could be from my side. I don't know. But it's like these types of things, where we have a predisposition to be overly guilty or overly pleasing or overly, desirous or whatever it is that, our thing is, or our family's thing is, overly addictive. These are the things that get cooked out of us or erased out of us in the emptiness. And it's funny because, even though I just said the word cooked, normally when they're cooked out of us, there can be tremendous heat and it's like being burnt out of us. But with emptiness, oftentimes it's very quiet. It's almost like God comes like a thief and just snatches up aspects of yourself and takes them away. And it can be for some people very unnerving if they don't trust. If you do trust, it's very lovely, but also disorienting. Like with me, one of my wife's biggest frustrations is just trying to talk with a character Craig, because so often I don't know what I'm speaking about. Like I'll try to speak about something from the past, or she'll try to have a conversation with me about the past, and I can't pull something together to have a fair conversation. I just, the words aren't there. It's like just grasping. It's like probably like having Alzheimer's, where you're trying to find a memory and it's just not there. But if you're comfortable with the groundless ground, if you're comfortable with having no past, like I am, it's quite wonderful. If you think you need a past, it might feel terrifying. And so I encourage you, Richard, just to settle into it. And the thing that I did, in relationship to work is, or actually in relation to work and to life, is basically I made it just a priority list, just kind of in my head of these are the things I have to do, and everything else I just let fall away. So like if a friend was getting married, did I go to the wedding? Excuse my language, but hell no. Like I didn't have to do that. I didn't do it. Like I didn't go to any weddings. I didn't go to any parties. I didn't go to Christmas parties. I didn't go here. I didn't go there. And I worked, just bare minimum, just enough to pay the bills. And I, took care of my kids. I packed lunches, like took them to school. But was I volunteering to, go on every school field trip and this and that. No, no, no. And so you just have to see, like, what can I cut loose during this time period? And you might find you have a lot of alone time. But this alone time for most of us is so radically healing. Like, so many of us we're codependent. We have so many needs. We're so engaged in all this extra stuff that's unnecessary. And to have just alone time, emptiness time, it's like the nervous system starts to soak it up. Just soak it up. The nervous system starts to say, oh my God, thank you. Thank you for this emptiness. Thank you for this lack of stimulation. Thank you for turning everything off in life and just giving me permission to do nothing. And, a lot of people teach that the ego is this great obstacle and it's this enemy and this and that. But this is actually a time where the ego can really surrender and fall in love with truth. Because if you look at what the ego really wants, the ego wants an endless vacation. It wants to feel good. It wants peace. It wants to be loved. It wants to be supported. And many of these things, when the ego really begins to realize that, oh, emptiness is like an endless vacation. It's like endless freedom. Peace makes me feel so good. The ego can actually start to shift inside where it doesn't have to be this fight and this division. The ego can melt into the emptiness and say, oh, thank God, someone actually hears me and supports me and loves me. The ego can be turned into something true during this time. And so, I encourage you, Richard, just take as much time as you can and melt and merge, and empty out, and still go show up to work, but you might notice at work, you're not looking for the quickest promotion or whatever. You're not looking for more clients. You're not looking to speed things up. If someone cancels, you're like, oh, that's great. That's fine. And if there's chaos at work or drama at work, you might notice you're the sane one in the room. You don't engage in any of it. And so this experience can be healing for you, but it can be healing for those around you. And, even as when you're working with clients, with you, with your training and everything, we have all these ideas of what we're supposed to do as a therapist or whatever. But with emptiness, it creates this presence in the room. Just a healing, like we were speaking about in the beginning, a welcoming presence. And you might find that you don't have much to say, even with clients, and or that there's more space and more peace in the sessions. And the ego may say, "Is this okay?" But people love it. They love having the space just to be themselves. And so more and more, it won't just be healing for you. It'll be healing for those around you, those receiving support from you. And so I encourage you just to melt into it and see, what is this about? What's the truth in emptiness? All these new realms that come to us, some teachers say, well, all these experiences just come and go, but It's like, well, why do they come? Why do they come? If they come and you give them no attention, they will come and go. But if you come and give them your full attention, then they become an aspect of your divinity. And you see, oh, they came out of grace. They came out of the intelligence of God, the intelligence of life. They came as this tremendous blessing. Tremendous blessing. And what really God wants is you to live this truth. For you to embody it and to be it. Not for you just to come and see, oh yeah, look at that. And then for it to go. God, why would God do that? God wants you to come, wants it to come. And you to recognize that this is an aspect of your true nature. It wants to become manifest here in this world. So anyways, beautiful question. Yeah. Yeah. Love the art at your house, Richard. Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so if anyone else has a question in the group, I welcome it. Now I'll get to the emails here. Here's a question. Hi, Craig. I have a question about meditation. Occasionally, when meditating, I go into this deep state where I am no longer aware of my thoughts, my body, my breath, my sensations. The only way I know I am in this state is because eventually I come out of it and have this feeling of, where the heck was I? It's a little frightening because it feels like if I fully let go, I'll cease to exist. Is this concerning? No, I'm not concerned about it. I think it's a beautiful thing. Oftentimes the ego, it has a fear, like if I let go really deeply, I will, and there's a couple choices the ego brings forth. It's either I'll die, I'll go crazy, I'll go home, I'll become homeless. It's normally one of these three. So either it's I'll die, I'll go crazy, I'll go mad, I'll lose my mind, I'll be overwhelmed, I won't be able to control it, or whatever the last one was. So I'll die, I'll go crazy, or oh yeah, I'll become homeless. And these are all fears of the superego. The superego, it does everything it can to make sure we're working, we have an income, that we have a house over our head. And look, that's a good thing. Okay, that's a good thing. But what Mark is describing here, he says he's meditating in a deep and a full way. And basically the superego disappears. And, it's almost like, or mostly disappears. And then it throws up a thought like, oh my God, I can't let go anymore because, I'll become non-existent. I'll die. I always like to call the ego's bluff and say, well, let's see. Let's see what happens. And so this aspect is what I call the gambler. So the gambler is kind of the opposite of the superego. The superego is like, we need to control everything. The gambler is like, well, let's just put all our cards on the table. Let's just see what happens. Let's just see what happens. Like this on Friday, or maybe it was Saturday, one of these days, I had a friend come over and he was chipping away at some ice on the, on the ground in my yard here, some big snow pile and ice pile. And he got it all cleared off. And then I realized, oh no, there's a bunch of snow still on the roof. That's going to continue dripping and just create another ice dam that he, like in the same place he just cleared. So I said, well, I'll hop up there and I'll get all the snow off the roof. And I hopped up there, kind of like a cowboy, and started slipping and sliding all over the place. But again, I'm a gambler. I'm just like, well, I'll just go up there and just see. If I fall off the roof, I'll scramble real quick and hopefully do a ninja roll and not break my back, And so you kind of have to be like that. You kind of have to be willing to be like Austin Powers, you know, and live dangerously. You have to be a little bit wild and just see what will happen if you let go fully. And I assure you, you will not die, you'll not go crazy, and you'll not become homeless. Now, let me clarify this. You may have an experience like Richard's having where you feel like, gosh, I don't really feel much motivation. I don't really feel like going into work. But with wisdom, we do show up to work. You know, with wisdom, we continue to pay the bills. You know, um, the going crazy part, we spoke about this in the Kundalini group on Friday. There's going to be times when you feel completely overwhelmed by energy or light, or like what Richard's describing, emptiness. I guess Mark is describing a similar thing, emptiness, where you go into a state of samadhi and you cease to exist. Like, can you go beyond the ego? This is the whole point. Can you just take a deep breath and say, well, let's see what's behind door number 3. Like, let's just see what's there. Let's see. Let's be curious and open some doors here. So the ego is always trying to keep you safe, but keep in mind, we're talking about opening to God, opening to truth, opening to love, opening to space, to peace. We're not talking about opening to, you know, I don't even know, something dangerous. Like we're not talking about doing something dangerous, like climbing, like being up on the roof, like I was the other day. We're talking about opening to love, to peace, to samadhi. So Mark, I encourage you, just let go. And you'll notice that you continue to exist. You continue to exist. And so trust, trust, trust. Here's a question from Robbie. Hi, Craig. When finding ways to motivate oneself along the spiritual path, is it okay to put a lot of motivation into earthly goals? For example, is it bad to want to improve spiritually with the idea that it will help me to be able to find a life partner? I'm having trouble with spiritual motivations such as having union with God or suffering less. They just don't sound exciting. Yeah, Robbie, I'll say this. If your heart is wired to connect, you know, in union or in love with another, if that is a true desire, I encourage you to follow that. To follow that. And is it bad to want to improve spiritually with the idea that it will help me to be able to find a life partner? No. Like God put that desire in you. God put the desire in you to connect. God put the desire in you to be spiritual. God put the desire in us to connect spiritually. So it's a beautiful desire. It's a beautiful desire. And so, you know, not all of us have to be on a monastic path for the entirety of our life, pushing everything aside. You know, many people come closer to God through relationship than through being a monk. Through being a monk. And most of us find God through relationship. Through relationship. And like when you see the eyes of a newborn child, especially if it's yours, you see God looking back at you. If you see a little puppy, you know, and you just see the sweetness, the innocence of life looking back at you. You know, when you fall in love, if it's true love, there's something good there. There's something true there, Robbie. So follow that. There's no judgment there, my friend. That's a good thing. Does the ego need to heal completely before awakening can abide? I'd say I'm going to just say it this way. Abiding awakening happens through healing. Through healing. So it's kind of like this. abiding awakening is happening in every single person on planet Earth right here, right now. The problem is we all have a big, fat, messy ego on top of an already abiding awakening. And so what happens is, if we haven't healed, every aspect of your ego that you haven't healed is loud. And because it's so loud, you give it your full attention. And when you give it your full attention, you don't give any attention to the awakened aspect of you. So I hope that made sense the way I said that. But when the ego is unhealed, like when the ego is just out of sorts, it's loud. It's like when you're angry, there's a loudness within you. When you're really sad, there's a loudness within you. When you feel numb and dead inside, that's a different kind of loudness. And that loudness veils an already abiding awakening. Like every child that's born here on planet Earth is awake, is abiding as light, love and space and unity. But then as their ego comes forward, the ego becomes the loudest voice in their head, and it eclipses their divinity. It eclipses our divinity. And so the way I like to look at this, Han, is that life is much easier if your ego's not suffering. Life is much easier. It's easier to see clearly. It's easier to think clearly. It's easier to love clearly, love fully, if your ego's not suffering. And so people have this idea, should I heal first or should I awaken first? They're the same thing. They need each other. They're not two separate things. They need each other. When we are healed, we are awake. When we're truly awake, we're healed. Because if you're awake but not healed, there's something really off there. Then you're kind of awake and kind of denying your humanity. But when someone's truly awake, there's this immense compassion that comes forward that naturally says, oh my gosh, there's a lot of darkness and pain and confusion in me. I need to heal that. I need to meet it with love. And so it's not really two different paths. It's one path. A lot of people teach it as two different things. And it just makes no sense to me. Because, like Han is saying, for an awakening to be abiding, you have to be healed. Like, you have to be mostly like 90% healed. We're always going to have, 10% of us that's an evolving edge. Like, that's just a given, being human. 10% at least. That's going to be an evolving edge. But we want to have a good 75%, where the ego is mostly sane and calm and happy, healthy. Because if the ego is a train wreck, awakening can never abide. So anyways, dear Craig, sometimes spiritual teachers will speak about reincarnation, as in something about our humanity and its karma survives death and is carried on into life beyond this one. Sometimes these same teachers will describe our true self as something that is untouched by the experience of the human and its karma. These two notions seem to be in conflict with one another. Does our karma from this life live on beyond death? Yes. And if so, then our true self must be affected by this human life, right? The true self can always be eclipsed by one's karma. So I'll say yes. I don't recall whether you have shared both these perspectives specifically, but if so, I was wondering if you could speak about it. Yeah. So, one of the things I can say about anytime we're looking at it, it's either this way or that way. what your mind is bringing forward thing is basically a dialect. You know, it's bringing forth a duality here, kind of an argument between two seeming opposites. But the truth is more paradoxical, and the experience of being human is very multi-dimensional. The experience of having a soul, you know, being a human being, because a human being is a divine being that also has karma. You know, there's a soul here that lives from lifetime to lifetime. And yes, everything affects each other. Everything affects each other. And so, you know, oftentimes what I want you to imagine is the more you open to the truth, the less conflict you'll find. And you'll start to begin to see that both are true. Both are true. And it's not this way or that way. It's both. It's both and. And there's more to life than meets the eye. A lot more. And so our experience is so multidimensional. But most people live either, you know, ridiculously attached to their ego, or just lost, you know, lost and suffering in one form or another. So, Thane, there's an aspect of self that is absolute and untouched. Like a primordial self, an absolute self. If I just stop right now and just melt into that state and that aspect of me, I become quite empty. Quite empty. Karma does not exist there. Craig does not exist there. My life does not exist there. There's just this vast empty freedom. And a prajnaparami to the great primordial mother. And the great primordial mother then gives birth to everything. And so here's where it becomes multidimensional. The great primordial mother gives birth to all this life, all this realm, all this world, our karma, our multiple incarnations. And things become confusing and messy and complicated. And so it's both and. It's both and, not either or. And this isn't something the mind can understand. It's only something that can be experienced. Like when I opened up to my absolute nature, I started laughing like a madman, literally like a crazy person. Because I saw that my life, it didn't matter in any way. It was totally irrelevant. It was completely meaningless and pointless, and yet it was totally meaningful and pointful, and it did absolutely matter. And so it's both and. And that's the great paradox here of being absolutely nothing and absolutely primordial. And then perhaps simultaneously absolutely embodied, absolutely human. And that's a confusing dance even for the best of us. So I hope that was helpful somehow, Thane. But the only way any of this will make sense to you, like does my karma affect my soul, is to see it. To see it. to see it, to experience it, to experience your multiple lifetimes. You know, I heard this incredible interview the other day. I think I spoke about this, but I'm not sure if I did. And I can't remember who it was by, but it was, gosh, it was this incredible interview. Which it was Joe Rogan and some other fella, but this fella, he talked about that human life was something like 180,000 years old. And that there was a rise and fall of empires just many times before. Like once, like the pyramids were in a jungle, not in a desert. So that's how different the earth was. That human beings lived in the Americas, like in the United States, 100,000 years ago. They didn't just come over once from Russia. 10,000 years ago, they'd been here for 100,000 years, even more. That the Amazon rainforest is full of temples. They're starting to do this. They have this kind of machinery where they can fly over the jungle, and using some sort of infrared radar kind of thing, they can see these massive temples throughout the rainforest, that the rainforest was once inhabited, like with huge cities. And what this did when I heard this interview, Graham Hancock who was with Graham Hancock. And what Graham was basically describing was that humans have been around a long, long time. And so in Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about, each of us having say 10,000 lifetimes or something. And I did the math on it once. I was like, that sounds crazy. There's no way, we didn't even exist that many generations back. But with this, this new technology and this new anthropology that's coming out, we're starting to see, oh yeah, maybe it's possible that we have lived, 1,000 times, a couple hundred times, I don't know, many thousand times. And that we do have karma from previous incarnations, and it has affected us in numerous ways. And we've lived in so many different ways and experiences. I'll say this just in transparency. It's a little bit of a fun story, but one day, just through the experience of a powerful psychedelic, some DMT, I saw just like hundreds of my lifetimes. It's completely mind-blowing to open to that. There were times when I was, just like way back at the beginning of time, like an African shaman, and talking in clicks, like into that kind of click type of language or vernacular speech. And as I felt into it, gosh, even as I feel into it now, just the earth was so different then. Life was so different then. And yet there was the same timeless absolute that's looking at each of you right now. So 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 years ago, whatever that was. I'm sure that fellow wasn't named Craig, But that same absolute is here right now. The quality of his human was different, and there's still a quality of that human within me now. But it feels, so far back in the past. Ridiculously far. and seen the countless incarnations I've had as a peasant and just a farmer, like a rice farmer in, Southeast Asia or whatever, and feeling the absolute there. And so, yes, these things are true, but of course, you don't know them until you experience them. Mayor Baba, this is from Michelle. Mayor Baba says 8,400,000 human lives. That's a lot. I don't know about that, but that's a lot. Okay, I better move on here. Gosh, I have to be careful when I check in with some of those previous incarnations. It's a real trip for me. Hi, Craig. I experienced a difficult spiritual confusion, perhaps a test, during the last days. I was eagerly reading with interest a book which turned out to be a series of offenses to what is most sacred to me. These offenses included Jesus Christ and Buddhism. I felt ashamed and sad for not having the discernment to stop reading it when I started to intuit the first signals of its darkness. It took days to recover after praying and meditation. I felt fear, felt blocked. I went back to one of your first videos where you speak about how you felt enormous loving presence of Jesus Christ beyond what the church has told us. It helped me tremendously. Thank you. Yeah. It's important to be careful about what you read. One of the things that's difficult about being spiritual and being really open is sometimes we're like a sponge and we let in other people's ideas and their worldviews too fully. And so if you intuit, there's something here that you shouldn't be reading or just, it's not for you, I encourage you just to stop and to let it go. But also to let this point out something, that there was a shakiness within you, a shakiness where perhaps you weren't empowered in your divinity, you weren't empowered in your truth, and you let someone else's opinion overtake you. And so sometimes life will hand us a book, and like you're saying, it wasn't the right book for you, and it really affects you in a dark way, a messy way, and difficult way. But that's also, not only put the book down, sure, that's good, but sometimes life just shows us where we are weak. And don't take that as a judgment, take that as a good thing. And life is always pointing out where I am weak. And so it's good to see this. Like, here's where Craig is weak, and here's where Craig needs to grow in strength, grow in love, grow in truth. And so it's a good thing to see, where we are weak, where we get confused. Sometimes if you find yourself like you get in an argument with a friend, and then next 4 days you're like arguing in your head about what they said. And that's showing, oh, here's a place where I'm not stable, where I'm not fully trusting my truth, where I give my power away. And so this is a wonderful opportunity, like you said, to reconnect to the truth. To reconnect to the truth in a heavenly way, but also what I'm going to invite you to do is reconnect in your belly. And just notice, how did I give my power away to that author? Many of us this last year gave our power away, maybe the last 3 years or 4 years, gave our power away to politicians, gave our power away to the news cycle. It feels like things are calming down with that. Many of us gave our power away to the coronavirus, and just said, oh my gosh, we all got to stay inside for the rest of our life, never breathe the air. And so we want to be careful where we give our power away. And stay with the truth, or reconnect with the truth, or find the truth, a new truth within us, more powerful truth, so we're not overcome by these. Okay. Oh, here's a question from Joe. Joe, sorry I didn't see your question. I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna press ask unmute. Let's see if I can do that. Are you here, Joe? Yeah, say something, Joe.
Hi. Hello,
Hi.
everyone.
Yeah.
Hi. Um, uh, well, I often um, experience, I think I should describe it as a high.
Yeah.
Uh, it's not like, I'm on anything, but I just experience this high where I'm just here and I'm smiling and I can be having my dinner and I just feel like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever tasted. Oh, or I'll be outside, I'll be walking, and I would just see something, and I just get lost in that moment, and just I don't know, I can be smiling like an idiot, or I would just get so absorbed in something, and I just feel hi.
Yeah.
Or maybe I should describe it as some sort of a buzz just going through my system. But you know, I can still function
Yeah.
because about 2 years ago, I experienced that kind of high to a point that I couldn't remember what I did yesterday. Like like I'm just here, but I can't remember what I did yesterday, and I don't care either.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but now, I have come down a lot and I still feel that kind of high, but I can function really well. But there was a time when I was experiencing that kind of high for days, part of my body maybe would be paralyzed or like I couldn't lift my leg or I would be tripping on the street because but I was never sad or I was never upset. I was just like, oh, I can lift my leg today. Okay, let's just slow down. But the whole time in my mind, I was just like, I love you, pavement. I love you, traffic light. I love you, little squirrels.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that a little bit? And also, I would like to know, perhaps that's normal. Perhaps that's how I'm supposed to live, and that's not a bad way to live, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe how I have been living until that point was just always in fear, always worried, always thinking
Yeah.
about the future. I was not in the present moment. Perhaps this is normal and it
Yeah.
ought to be this way.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful, Joe. Thanks for sharing. And so, in a very similar way that I spoke to Richard about emptiness, sometimes there's very high states of consciousness come to us. And again, they're here to teach us, what's possible. What's possible. And so you might find yourself, falling in love with the sky or the traffic light or the little squirrels and just feeling tremendous love and freedom. And I encourage you just to melt into it. You know, in Zen, they call this, there's this phrase about being drunk on emptiness. And we can be drunk on bliss. We can be drunk on freedom. We can be drunk on love. We can be drunk on, amrita, which is like just a really, just like sweet form of bliss. And if a spiritual state like this comes to you, just melt into it and see what it's like to live this way. Sometimes it's simply a reaction, like a byproduct of awakening, where when we let go, like you said, of fear, when we let go of confusion, when we let go of heaviness, all of a sudden the body just feels like so ridiculously light. and our vision becomes, like technicolor. Everything looks so beautiful and vibrant, and the heart is just shining because, it feels so free. It's like, being a little kid and being cooped up in school. And on the last day of school, you're just bursting with emotion and love, and you're just so happy for summer. Um, I've lived many years just feeling ridiculously euphoric most of the time. We get into trouble when we expect that we should feel this way all the time, because sometimes life isn't just all bliss. The way I teach it is, with Satchitananda, there's bliss, there's space, there's this quiet intelligence, there's this love, radiance that's always here in the background. But sometimes in the foreground, um, we have cancer, or we're going through a relationship breakup, or we lose our job, or all of a sudden we don't have any money, or whatever it is. And life can be hard. But one of the beautiful things about this bliss, like sometimes God will just turn on one quality very intensely. Like with Richard, emptiness. With you, it might be just this happiness or joy or radiance. And your job is to melt into it fully. Of course, still doing your best to function here on planet Earth, but melt into it fully and learn from it. Like when I first woke up, there was so much euphoria. It's like ridiculous amounts of euphoria. Like I felt like, I never really was a drug person, but I was like, God, this is like 1,000 times better than the best drugs ever. It's like, I just feel so good all the time. And now, there's times when my body aches, when it hurts, when, I stub my toe, or, I get, beat up at jujitsu or whatever. And, my body will be in ridiculous pain, but I'll ask a question. Is that bliss still here? Oh yeah, it is still here. It is still here. And it's good to claim this experience, that this is an aspect of self. It's an aspect of true nature. Just happiness and joy. Like this is, we are this. Not even that we're meant to be this. We are this. Like we are radiance, literally. Literally. And it's good just to melt into this and to give yourself permission. Just to melt into it fully, to experience it, to be it, to own it, to claim it. And then if life comes and slaps you upside the face and pulls the carpet out from under you, and this and that, you fall on your knees and you're crying and you get reconnected to the ego, a good question is then to ask, like, well, is that bliss still here? And to kind of feel into it and to notice, oh yeah, it is. There's a quiet radiance here. And my life is falling apart. Like my life is falling apart. And it takes the dread out of life. It takes the dread out of it. It takes the hopelessness. Like this is the antidote for hopelessness. Some people on the path, it's interesting. They awaken in a way that doesn't include the heart. And then there's kind of like a quiet sternness or austereness. And then it can dry up a little bit and get into like a hopeless state. And so some people I've worked with, they really open up here, but their heart didn't fully open, or maybe didn't open at all. And then they go into kind of like a nihilism or a hopelessness. But this is the antidote for that. And so it's a beautiful thing just to enjoy it and enjoy that the world needs more of this. Needs more of this. We need more joy because there's so much suffering here. We need to balance life out. let everyone know, hey, there's hope. There's hope. You know, happiness is possible. It's possible. So, anyways, God bless you, Joe. Thanks for sharing yourself. Yeah. Okay, good. Let me see. I think I just have uh, another couple quick questions. Let me see if I can get to them. This is a fun one. It's I shouldn't say it's a fun one. It's a relationship one, and so I'll just speak about this question, and this one might be the last one here. Hi, Craig. Wow. I'm going to have to ask for forgiveness because I said this is a fun one. This is a pretty tough question, so forgive me. Hi, Craig. My ex-girlfriend recently died. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I love her and we had a deep soul connection. According to a psychic, our connection stretches over many lifetimes where we've had problems with our relationships. It seems like there's been some purpose to why we keep connecting in different lifetimes. Maybe the purpose is to learn to love. Yeah, that sounds about right. That's a good lesson for all of us. I have fear of receiving and giving love. And a fear of giving love and sharing my feelings, expressing feelings. I've learned feelings are dangerous and wrong and means humiliation and abandonment. I numb myself from vulnerability. Even now I numb myself from grieving. I become self-conscious that I'm feeling a feeling, then it disappears. It seems automatic, like I don't have a choice to be willing to experience it. I don't see where the choice is or how I turn off feelings. Can you speak about this? How to allow grieving and feelings and not shut down? Yes, so one of the ways we can work with this is just to feel feelings simply on a level of sensation. And so say for example, if you can't feel anything in your heart, sometimes it can be helpful to take your hand and put it on your heart. And it can even be helpful to do it under your shirt so that the warmth of your hand, like right in the palm of your hand, is there's a chakra center right in the palm of your hand. If you put that right in the center of your chest, and the other one put it right on your belly, and as you breathe, you feel into that. You feel like that skin on skin contact, and see if you can just allow the, like the nerves and the energetic feeling, the palm of your hand to feel into your chakra center, and just notice what you feel there. And I encourage you to think of your ex-girlfriend, to remember her, the good times you had, the bad, and we welcome the feelings forward, like we spoke about in the beginning of this satsang, is we welcome what's here. And just notice if there's contraction, notice if there's tension, notice if there's heat. And even if, like you said, there's just numbness, do your best just to stay with the numbness and acknowledge it. Like, wow, I feel unusually numb. I feel incredibly numb. I feel incredibly dead. Or I feel incredibly angry. And to name it, to acknowledge it, to validate it, to validate it, to validate it. And so the reason I'm asking you to put your hands like literally on your body, on those chakra centers, because feeling happens mostly from the throat chakra down. And I want you to put awareness in the palms of your hands and in the chakra centers underneath the palms of your hands. And just feel there, just breathe there. And in the same way, I'll think of something stupid here. If I took my cold hammer out of my garage, because it's freezing out in my garage right now. If I took my cold hammer and put it on your chest, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so cold. So we know that feeling is happening. And so I want you to do the same thing with your hand, but not with my cold hammer. Put it with your hand. You put it on in your heart. Say like, what am I feeling there in my heart? Oh, I'm feeling warmth. Or, oh, it feels like a numb, achy deadness. And can you breathe into that numb, achy deadness? And imagine that numb, achy deadness is like one of these weighted blankets that they're selling now for people with anxiety. Just lift that blanket up and to feel what's under. Like, what is that blanket covering? What's there within you? What's there that you do not want to see? That you do not want to see. And another trick we can do, especially with someone who died, in this case, it's your ex-girlfriend, talk to her. Talk to her. Say, sweetie, I miss you so much. I love you. You left me too soon. I hope to see you again next lifetime. How you doing now in heaven? Talk to her. Oftentimes when we talk to, quote unquote, the dead, I don't like the word the dead because we just live on. But when we talk to people on the other side, there's great love there. There's tremendous love there. So open that door. So anyways, okay, I think I did my part. Thanks everyone for hanging in there. Thanks for sharing your hearts with me. Thanks, Richard, for sharing your emptiness. Joe, for sharing your light. Thank you, everyone. The beauty of your hearts. Keep shining them out to the world. Thanks, everyone, for your donations and your support. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So much love to each and every one of you. See you next time. Bye for now.